During the chaos of the Second World War, not all experiments were conducted on men. Hidden deep within military facilities, scientists sought new ways to turn nature itself into a weapon, to transform instinct into strategy, and biology into machinery. What began as small field tests soon evolved into classified programs codenamed under a single term, Project Hunter. Declassified fragments speak of dogs trained to crawl beneath tanks, of rats bred to spread disease behind enemy lines, and of other stranger attempts, where the line between life and control disappeared completely. For decades, these files were sealed, scattered across destroyed archives in Berlin, Warsaw, and Minsk. Tonight, for the first time, we reconstruct the hidden story behind the animal soldiers of the war. The programs erased from history, yet still whispered about by those who saw them. This is not fiction. These are the forgotten experiments of Project Hunter. In the spring of 1943, the Eastern Front was collapsing. German Field Command authorized the creation of Hundestaffel 12A, a secret division of explosive-trained dogs. According to recovered notes from the Königsberg Veterinary Institute, more than 312 animals were taken from military kennels between March and August of that year. Each was starved for exactly 36 hours before training, to ensure obedience through hunger. The goal was simple. Dogs were fitted with 12-kilogram charges of composition C-43 and trained to crawl under enemy tanks in search of food. The Soviet archives, declassified in 1989, mention a single surviving trainer, Sergeant Otto Falke, who claimed that at least 187 dogs were deployed near Kursk Oblast, none of which returned. Witnesses later reported seeing dogs running across no man's land, their tails on fire before a blinding series of explosions. The sound of barking became forbidden in some German camps for weeks after that day. In late 1944, as food shortages struck the Eastern Front, German military biologists launched a covert program under the Reichsanimalisches Institute in Breslau, codename Rat Vector Unit 9R. Their research aimed to weaponize one of nature's oldest survivors, the rat. Reports describe over 4,200 specimens collected from abandoned factories and sewers, bred in controlled infection chambers. Laboratory notes recovered decades later mention Experiment R-17, involving the deliberate infection of rats with Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that once caused the Black Death. The plan was horrifying in its simplicity. Release the animals behind enemy lines to contaminate food stores and trenches. Soviet field doctors in Polesia, near modern-day Belarus, documented entire platoons falling ill within days after German retreat, their supplies gnawed open and soaked in a strange black residue. Only 2 researchers from Unit 9R are believed to have survived the war. One, Dr. Heinrich Kessler, was later found dead in 1951 inside his Berlin apartment, surrounded by jars of preserved rodents. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as respiratory failure, but the lungs were full of bite marks. In the final winter of the war, German command turned to desperate methods of communication. When radio signals were jammed and wires cut, a new division was formed under the Abteilung für Tierverhalten und Nachrichtentechnik, the Animal Behavior and Communications Unit. Their experiment, known as Fox Division 7F, sought to use wild foxes as night messengers. More than 240 red foxes were captured from the forests of East Prussia and surgically implanted with miniature transmitters weighing less than 400 grams. Each was trained to navigate by smell and return to feeding stations hidden behind enemy lines. But something went wrong. Within weeks, reports described the animals returning at impossible distances, some over 120 kilometers from the original release point. Their fur patchy, eyes dilated, movements erratic. Local villagers claimed they could hear strange, human-like cries echoing through the woods at night. Soviet patrols that entered those forests never came back. When Allied forces later found the remains of the 7F compound near Allenstein, the cages were empty. The transmitters were still sending signals. They stopped only on April 30th, 1945, the day Berlin fell. As Germany faced collapse in early 1945, the Reich's Research Division began what internal memos called the final biological trials. Deep beneath the forests near Lviv, in a bunker complex later codenamed Boar Unit K-43, a group of neurologists and engineers worked on a series of experiments that would blur the line between animal instinct and remote control. Their objective was to implant primitive radio receivers directly into the brains of wild boars, attempting to trigger aggression and obedience through electromagnetic pulses. Surviving blueprints show heavy restraints, copper helmets wired to field transmitters, and the signature of Dr. Albrecht Kohr, one of the last scientists attached to the project. Witness accounts from retreating soldiers mention hearing constant squeals echoing from the forest at night, and something larger moving through the trees, unaffected by bullets. Soviet recovery teams that entered the bunker weeks later described the walls as claw-marked, the equipment torn apart. They found one chamber still sealed, inside a boar carcass, with a metal frame fused into its skull. The generator powering the device was still humming, after nearly 2 months with no one left alive to maintain it. When the war ended, most records of Project Hunter were seized by advancing Soviet forces. The remaining files were scattered, some burned, others reclassified under unrelated research programs. Yet fragments continued to surface. In 1952, British intelligence documented a shipment of preserved animal organs sent from Berlin to London, labeled Cognitive Pattern Transfer Studies. A year later, a farmer in Ukraine unearthed a sealed metal crate near the ruins of an old radio tower. Inside were dozens of preserved embryos, each with small metallic implants embedded in the skull. The contents were confiscated by local authorities. The crate itself was never logged in any official report. Decades later, during a 1981 power outage in Lviv, several shortwave radio operators claimed to receive rhythmic pulses on abandoned military frequencies. The pattern repeated 3 words over and over: Hunter, awake, respond. Whether this was interference, coincidence, or something else remains unknown. What is certain is that Project Hunter did not end with the war. It simply changed form.